Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to log in and listen to us and give us the opportunity to tell you a little bit more about foster care and the organisation that we work for. Just to let you know that you can see us and hear us, but we can't see you or hear you. So there is a chat box facility that you can access, and we can communicate with you via that throughout the course of this evening's presentation. We'll do our best to, if you have any questions, if you type them in there, we'll do our best to try and answer those as we go along. If you're able to, with the chat box, if you're able to just give us a little indication as to where you're joining us from this evening, that helps us with our marketing. It lets us know which areas we're reaching. So if you're able to just go into the chat box now and just give us your postcode or let us know whereabouts in Adelaide you're joining us from, that'd be great. Just while you're doing that, I'll perhaps introduce the people on the panel this evening. Thanks, guys, for that. Really appreciate that. So my name is Michael Down. I'm the Carer Practice Manager here at Life Without Barriers. So I manage a team of social workers who look after people who want to become foster carers and bring them through the inquiry and the assessment stages to the point where they're approved as carers, and then they get allocated a support social worker. Joining me this evening is Glen Davie. I'll let Glen tell you a little bit about who he is and what he does. Glen, over to you.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, everyone. I'm Glen Davie. I am a foster carer. I've been a foster carer now for a bit over 5 years. And I'm also what's called a foster care ambassador. And part of my job is to encourage people to become foster carers. Thanks, Michael.
That's great. Thanks, Glen. And also joining us this evening is Karina. Karina can let us know a little bit about what she does.
Hi everyone, I'm Karina. I'm currently the Care Engagement Officer with Life Without Barriers. I've done a variety of different roles in my time with the agency, but currently sitting in Mike's team doing a lot of the front end stuff with carers. So usually when you touch base with us very early on, you'll often meet me. And I can introduce you guys to what the process is in terms of assessment and training and all the requirements that we need for foster carers. And thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Karina. Thanks, everyone. Okay, we'll start our presentation. I think the best place for us to start would be with an acknowledgement of country. So I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners and custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to their elders past and present, as well as to the emerging leaders. I extend my appreciation to their cultural heritage, beliefs and spiritual connection with this land. I acknowledge my gratitude that we share this land today, my sorrow for some of the costs of that sharing, and my hope and belief that we can move to a place of equity, justice and partnership together. Okay, so within the presentation this evening, we're going to explore the answers to some questions that we regularly hear from people who are keen to find out if fostering is right for them. So some of the things we're going to look at will be about Life Without Barriers, about foster care, about children in care, how to become a carer, and we'll also have a look at some common questions towards the end as well. Like I said earlier, if you do have any questions during this presentation, please feel free to use the chat box, and we'll be having a look at that as we go along, and we'll try and answer those as we go along. And if we miss any, we'll try and clear those up towards the end as well. So, who is Life Without Barriers? Life Without Barriers is a national organisation. It's a very large organisation, with its head office being in Newcastle in New South Wales. It supports over 4,500 children and young people and 3,025 foster and kinship carers. It also supports nearly 5,000 refugees and asylum seekers, over 6,000 people supported through home and community care. It also supports over 5,000 people with disabilities. Over 1,800 people are supported participants of the NDIS programme. We also have over 1,700 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are supported through our programmes, and we partner with 24 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander organisations. So if you were joining LWB, you'd be joining a very large organisation with a lot of expertise and well-respected organisation, certainly within South Australia and further afield. So these are our core values at LWB. Relationships are the bedrock of everything that we do. We like to build positive working relationships with everybody. We like to partner in our working. We like to use our imagination, especially around trying to achieve best possible outcomes for young people. Sometimes we like to get a bit creative with how we do that. We like to be respectful in everything we do. I think that goes hand in hand with the relationship building. We also try to be as responsive as possible, trying to meet the needs of children in a timely fashion. This requires us quite often to be quite courageous and advocate strongly on behalf of children and carers. So hopefully there are values that you guys can get on board with. If they feel like you can align with those, then you're in the right place. So what is foster care? Foster care is for children who need time away from their family. Foster care provides a safe and supportive home where they can heal and grow. It might be for a night, a week, a year, or until the child reaches adulthood. You might hear foster care talked about as foster care or out-of-home care or family-based care. Bear with me a moment. So within the state of South Australia, all children that enter into out-of-home care arrangements come via the Department for Child Protection. We obviously have very close links with that department, and we work closely with them to work out the best possible options for young people within South Australia. Okay. We've got nearly 50,000 children unable to live safely at home in Australia. We're always looking for more foster carers. Glen, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to say in relation to that. Sorry, I'm just chucking you the ball right now.
Not too much on top of that. It's just, you know, there are so many out there that we're looking for people with those values, and they're critical, absolutely critical to the child, because we're providing something they haven't been given before, and it's just absolutely essential for our community. So I encourage people to seriously consider this, and if they think they can, to get on board.
Thanks, Glen. I mean, the fact that you guys have given up your time this evening to come and listen to this presentation is a credit to you.
Mike, we've just got a question that's coming through the chat box. Lynn's just asked if you can still do foster care and work full time.
You can. However, I think that would very much depend on the needs of the children that you would potentially be looking after. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. If you have a child with more significant needs, it might be that you need to potentially reduce your working hours in order to better meet the needs of that child. I don't know if there's anything else I've missed there, Karina.
I think it also very much depends on what type of care you're interested in providing. We do have a lot of respite carers who provide fabulous respite for our kids that do work full time but have lots of availability on their weekends.
Yeah. Okay, so why do children come into care? A number of reasons. Common reasons for children needing foster care are, unfortunately, they may have suffered abuse, physical, sexual or emotional abuse at the hands of, whilst in the care of their primary carers. They may have been subject to neglect. Parental mental health may be a factor, may be preventing parents from being able to meet children's needs consistently or keep them safe. Unfortunately, parents may have died, and that may leave the child needing to be looked after. They may have significant needs which aren't able to be met within the family home. So what does a child in care look like? Well, you know, there's no real template for that. All children could be a child that requires to be looked after. They're just ordinary kids, basically. Could be anyone. Age 0 to 17. Ideally, we'd be looking for carers who could support children to remain connected to their culture and their identity. That's really important for children who are looked after, because their families are really important to them, rightly so. And also, this is really, really important as well. We need to be mindful that all children who are looked after for whatever reason have suffered some trauma to a lesser or greater degree, and we need to be really mindful of that as carers. That really informs the way that we look after children. It's very different to looking after, if you've been fortunate enough to bring up your own children, your own biological children, or have experience of looking after other people's children. Those children won't necessarily have experienced trauma in their lives. The children that we look after very much have, and we need to adapt the way that we look after children accordingly. And we have to apply what we call a trauma lens, but we'll perhaps talk about that a bit more further on. Are there different types of foster care? Yes, there are. So these are the main types. We've got respite care. Respite care gives children an opportunity to mix in a different social network while their primary carer takes a short break. It's regular or occasional time spent with carers who are not the child's primary carers, and is usually planned in advance. Really, really important role. Respite carers play a massive role within our organisation, builds in a lot of stability into long-term placements, provides a massive support for carers within LWB. Really important. We're always looking for respite carers. We're looking for all types of carers, to be honest. Emergency or crisis care. For their own safety, children may need somewhere to stay immediately for a night or even a few weeks. The call for emergency care can happen at any hour of the day or night. Short to medium term foster care. While difficult situations at home are resolved or until plans for longer term care can be made, children need a safe, stable, caring environment where they can strengthen their family relationships so they can return home safely. So yeah, so sometimes it's about providing a safe place for a child whilst plans are made. Kinship foster care. Living with a relative or close family friend can help protect the important connections a child has to their family, culture and community. It can also help children avoid the added trauma of living in an unfamiliar environment. And again, we can support those kinship placements as well. Long-term foster care. Some children in long-term care are not expected to return to live with their family on a full-time basis. Foster carers who provide long-term care commit to parenting children toward adulthood and provide them with stability and permanency. I mean, I would add actually that often placements go long beyond adulthood, continuous in some cases. But yeah, there's different types of foster care there, require different levels of commitment from the foster carers. Obviously, respite carers is a bit more intermittent. Long-term carers is 24/7 and ongoing. So it was a longer-term commitment. Also, we need to be mindful that for some children, there's a plan for children to return back to family. So sometimes it's the foster care as well to support those plans for children to return back to family. In South Australia, we sometimes talk about foster carers as being general or specialist. So specialist carers are often defined as carers who look after children with more significant needs, possibly health needs or behavioural needs. They may have been affected more as a result of their early childhood experiences. It's sometimes a bit of a blurry line between, general and specialist, and things can change on your journey as a foster carer. In relation to specialist carers, we need to be more flexible and readily available. you receive a higher reimbursement. You're provided with more regular and intensive support and coaching. You receive additional training, and you have access to LWB therapeutic consultation services. So a child who's classed as a specialist child may have learning difficulties, intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, communication difficulties, or complex behaviours as a result of trauma. Obviously, all of those things are on a bit of a scale, so you can be, so just to bear that in mind. What is our approach to foster care? Well, we work with the care model in mind within LWB. This is a model that was developed by Cornell University in America, and this kind of underpins the way that we work with carers to support children. We're very much relationship based. We like to build trust, meaningful relationships to help foster emotional and social confidence. We are developmentally focused, so we're matching strategies for change with where the child is at developmentally to challenge but not to overwhelm. So we're meeting the child where they're at in their development. We're not putting our expectations onto those child. Well, this child's 5 and he should be doing this, this and this. Well, another 5-year-old hasn't been through this, this and this, have they? So we need to be mindful of that. Trauma informed. We touched on it earlier. It's about being mindful of what children have been through and how that can impact on their development. And it's about modifying our expectations and interactions accordingly. And we have people within our organisation who can help work with alongside you to look at how we can support children in their development. We like to involve family, so that's about maintaining those links and community connections to help a child maintain their identity. Really important. We're competency centred, but we help children to develop their skills and knowledge and attitudes they need to negotiate for everyday life. And we are ecologically orientated. So we're providing a caring and supportive environment with helpful models to show children how to care for themselves and others.
Thank you, Mike. We've got another question. Someone wants to know what the age is for foster carers. So we do have a minimum age, I think it is, so 25 years and up, we can look at you guys to be foster carers. The question is, can we start the process a little bit before you turn 25? And I think it depends on your circumstances and it depends on your individual situation. So I'm more than happy to talk to anybody if they would like to touch base with us after the webinar tomorrow and talk about it a little bit more if anyone's interested.
That's great. Thanks, Karina. That's brilliant.
Mike, I
yeah,
just think I might jump in because with the age question is also about the older generations, me. So just so people understand, I'm 70 and still going strong. So, it's about your passion, etc. And the other thing I'll just quickly touch on, because there were some questions earlier on about full-time. I run a full-time business, which is full on all the time. My wife also works in the business, but the way we operate is that there's always one of us available for any special things that our foster child needs. But I've also got friends who are foster carers. They work full-time, but they're not looking after special needs children. They're looking after children who just need a safe place. It is that there are many ways you can work it, etc. Because sometimes people say to me, "Oh, I run a business and I haven't got time." Well, I do run a business, but it's about priorities. So I hope that helps people with the full-time thing a bit more.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Glen.
We've got another question as well, Mike. Sorry. Thanks, Glen. Someone has asked if you get to choose the age group that you provide care for. And I think it's really important that when people do come to us and inquiring about foster care, you know, we ask, what is it that you would like? What is going to be the best fit for your family and your home? So that absolutely includes age and gender and complexity around behaviours. So you do have the ability to be quite vocal in what's going to fit, and that's certainly something that we talk about with you guys. And you know, when it comes to the end and we're looking at matching, it's definitely a matching consideration as to what's going to be the best fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely something we'll talk a lot about within the inquiry and assessment process, and there'll be recommendations made around that within the assessment that we send off to the department at the end of the process. So definitely.
I'm going to interrupt again, Mike. Sorry, you're not going to want me on future webinars. We also have another question about whether you have to own your own home. No, you don't have to own your own home. We have many carers who rent and own, people who have moved house. We do assess the situation in terms of if someone's about to move house or they're about to transition into a new property. That's something that we would probably explore a little bit more.
That's great. Thanks, Karina. Okay. Next slide. So what is most important role of a foster carer? We need carers with attributes and beliefs that we know are good for children. A great way to demonstrate this is through the first-hand experience of carers. Now, guys, just giving you the heads up, these videos never work for us when we do these presentations. So what we'll do is we'll send you a link to these videos via the chat room, and also in an email that we'll send out to you following this presentation this evening. So please have a look at these videos in your own time. There's some really good ones. Stacey is a former looked after child. She's talking about the ongoing relationship that she's got with her previous carer well beyond the age of 18. It's really, really good. And Chris and Sophie were talking about the sort of deliberations they went through prior to looking at becoming foster carers and the journey they've been on. And Gwen again talks about the journey she's been on as a foster carer and looking after teenagers and what that's been like for her. So some really good videos there. So I would encourage you to have a look at those in your own time. So what do we look for in carers? What are the magic ingredients? We need carers with attributes and beliefs that we know are good for children. Some of these may seem obvious, but they are not always easy to find. So carers need to be patient and have understanding, acceptance and availability, commitment, a flexible approach, time to give, and a commitment to maintaining and strengthening family relationships. Children in care have usually had some tough experiences in their lives that they need help to understand and move through. Sometimes these experiences mean that children haven't learned to understand and express how they feel, and the only way to let out is through how they behave. So we need to be mindful of that when we see what we might perceive as difficult behaviours. We know that great carers have some great attributes that we look for. These are beliefs, ways of being, and values that make them open and accepting and stable people to lean on. So we need people who have got plenty of time to spend with children. They need to want to help children return safely home to their families if that's the plan for those children. If you believe in children, all children will do well if they get the right help, care and support. If you want to share your home and your resources with children who need help, and if you like trying to understand why children do things, and if you feel that you can help a child manage through feelings of missing their family, and if you believe it's important that children feel included in your family when they are in foster care, then you're probably a person that we would like to join us and become a foster carer.
Excuse me, Mike, can I jump in again with another question?
Of course, absolutely.
We've got someone asking about the costs of going through the process in terms of attending training and getting police checks done. So Life Without Barriers covers all the financial costs associated with following those processes in terms of screening checks. We cover all the costs of training. What it will cost is your time. So asking people just to be available to attend the training. We are trying to get more creative in how we deliver that training, as in some is online and some's face-to-face, some's after hours, some's during business hours. So financially, it shouldn't really cost you anything, just your time.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Karina. So who can be a carer? It's likely that you can be a carer. Carers can be partnered or single, with or without children, from all backgrounds and all cultures. Your ability to care for and nurture a child is what really matters. So what we're looking for, you must be over 25 with relevant life experience. You need to be well and healthy. You need to have a regular source of income. You can be from any culture, faith, ethnicity, religion, sexuality or gender, identity expression, not a problem. Single or in a relationship, willing to undergo background checks, about your family, about your home and family. You can be with or without your own children. You can rent or own your own place. You do need to have a spare room. That is essential. And everyone involved needs to be active and willing. So other family members, other household members need to be on board with the idea of fostering. How do you become a foster carer? Well, this is where Karina comes in. So if following this presentation this evening, this is something you want to pursue, you want to find out a bit more about it, you want to take the next steps, we'll provide you with some information in an email following this, which will give you the details about how you do that. So basically, you'll have a conversation with someone at our National Inquiry Service. They'll take some basic information from you. Following that, you'll have a conversation with Karina, and Karina will arrange to come out and see you. And she'll do a more detailed information exchange at that point. Karina, do you want to take people through this? Because you know this system far better than me.
Yeah, I can do. I'm also seeing there's a few questions coming in, but
Okay.
in terms of the front end things, you know, once we received your inquiry through our central team, it comes to me. I have a bit of a read through about what the information we've collected, and then I give you a call and touch base and see whether there's been any changes since you've inquired, provide you with a little bit more information. And then I always like to come out and see people face to face. I find it's really important to get to know people in their home, and people get to know me as well, and a bit about life without barriers and what they can expect from the agency. I try not to overwhelm people too much at the start. So that home visit is really an opportunity to explain how the assessment process works, talk about the paperwork that we need. There's certain boxes that we need to tick from the department. They're our funding body, so we have to be able to follow through process like the screening checks, like the training. But I'm the one that is the primary contact, and I'm the one who supports you. I'm still support people sometimes when they're going through assessments. So I can help liaise around police checks. If you've got any questions, people often call me if they're having trouble navigating the online, you know, portal with the DCSI clearance checks. And yeah, more than happy to field any phone calls as well after this. There is a question that's just come through about things children might need when they come into care. So I think every case is different. Every children has a different circumstance, and they're coming from a different situation. So it's very much case by case. Every child will be in a different circumstance, and we sort of take that into consideration. Obviously, if you're looking to care for an infant, quite a bit of extra stuff comes along with that. So we do try and help people out, you know, in helping them with what they need to get in terms of sleeping and feeding and all that sort of stuff. But definitely something that we work with people around to say, hey, you know, this is what you know you might be needing. Let's talk to the department about what the child already has, what's going to be coming with them, and it's different from child to child. So sorry, I can't be more specific on that.
No, that's great. Thanks, Karina. And you know, Glen's probably got some first-hand experience when it comes to this kind of thing, but also we know more about some children than other children, and sometimes things are done in a more planned way, and sometimes things are done in a quicker, more of an emergency type way. So like Karina says, every situation is slightly different, and we'll do our best to support you in whatever the circumstances.
Yeah, I can add a little bit there, Mike. Our first ever placement was an emergency placement. We got a call at 4 p.m. on New Year's Eve 5 years ago, and they asked us if we were taking a 14-year-old, and we said sure. So he landed at our place at 6 p.m. and we had a stack of people coming over for New Year's Eve, so that was an interesting one. But we had a room. He came with his own PlayStation, his own TV, all his clothes, everything else. So all we did was make sure he was fed, etc. And 2 weeks later, they placed him, etc. And then after that, we had respite care. Now, with the respite, everything was supplied by the actual carer.
Yeah.
So we didn't have to do much there apart from make sure the child was safe and looked after. And then when it came to what we are now as long-term carers of a special needs child, there were certain things provided, but then because he was going to be with us long-term, we had to look at what we needed to provide as well. And so we did that. So, and since then, we provide for his clothing, we provide for his entertainment, etc., etc. The department and Life Without Barriers helps us with programs for special therapies, etc., etc. And that is not at our cost. So it, as Karina said, it varies with every single situation. There's no set way. It's just, and basically, I think another key thing of a foster carer is to be flexible, not get bent out of shape easily.
Yeah, absolutely. Go with the flow a bit. Make the best of the situation we find ourselves in. Thanks, guys. So just to carry on this slide, training. There is a certain, there are a couple of training courses that we have to do within the assessment process. The major one being a thing called Shared Lives, which is a pre-approval training course. There may be some additional training that we look to do depending on the type of care that you're thinking about providing, but we'll talk to you about that a bit more as you go through the process. Once you've done some work with Karina and she's taken you through what we call the inquiry phase, so you've done the training that you need to do, we've done all the checks that we need to do, we will be ready to start your assessment. So you'll be handed over to an assessor within our team and we'll start the assessment process. The assessment process itself actually takes no more than 5 months. We have some very strict criteria around that. So at the end of that, there'll be an assessment report written, and that will be sent to the department for their approval. And hopefully that won't take too long. And once they've approved you, then you will be ready to go foster carer, and we will introduce you to your supervising social worker at LWB, and then we'll start the process of finding a suitably matched child or children, depending on your situation.
Can I quickly add something, Mike? I'm sorry. I just thought it'd be interesting to let people know that, you know, the assessment interviews, they can be quite, you know, personal. We do ask really personal questions about you know, how you parent, how you've grown up, and any trauma, grief and loss. But we do have some very highly skilled assessors that can have those interviews very sensitively, very respectfully. So I think, you know, it's important to know that, you know, you will be asked some quite personal questions, but that we do it in a very sensitive and very discreet way.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Karina. Definitely. Okay, so some of the frequently asked questions are, I'm single, can I foster? Yep, you can. Families come in all different shapes and sizes, and so do foster families. We're a same-sex couple, can we foster? Of course. Life Without Barriers values a diverse community of foster carers. Can I foster even though I don't have my own children? Yes. We know that having experience interacting with and caring for children is useful when new to fostering, but that can be gained in many ways other than parenting. Even if you've never cared for children, having personal attributes that would make you a good carer is what we're looking for. So within the assessment process, we do need to evidence certain competencies, but you are potentially able to evidence those competencies in other ways other than talking about bringing up your own children. About your home, do I need to have a spare room? Yes, you do. I mean, unless you're looking after a very small baby, in which case they can share your own room, but generally you need to have a spare room. No, however, you do need to demonstrate that your premises are safe and suitable to foster. You can be renting in public housing, paying off your home, or own your home outright. About your family, can I have my own children and foster other children? Yeah, your family situation is considered when making decisions about the age and needs level of children you may foster. Generally speaking, children placed with caring families will be younger than your own children. Will all my family be involved in the assessment process? Yes, everyone in your household will be part of the assessment process. It is important to make sure that everyone knows what fostering is and is on board with the decision. About the children in care.
Excuse me, Mike, I have another question.
Yeah.
We've got some people asking about whether they can take a foster child to church with their family. Would you like to answer that?
Thank you. I think, again, it's about the needs of the child. I think we wouldn't be looking to force children to do things that they don't want to do, but if it's something that they're on board with and they're willing to go, then, you know, we'd be okay with that, I think. But yeah, again, all children are different, so it might be that a child who comes into your care may have their own religious beliefs, and we might be asking you as carers to support those beliefs and support them in maintaining those, which might involve, taking them to a place of worship or providing them with different literature or whatever the case may be. So, but again, we can talk about all of that within the inquiry and assessment phase. How are children matched with foster carers? By getting to know you well, we can ensure that children matched to carers are those that they are able to best support. We take into account their unique needs and parts of their identity that might be a good fit for you and your family to help create a sense of belonging. So going back to that about children being matched. So what we do is we get referrals from the Department for Child Protection in relation to children that need to be looked after out of home care. Those referrals will differ in quality, they'll differ in detail, they'll differ in the amount of information that is shared or known about the child. So sometimes we'll have a lot of information to go on in terms of making good quality matching. Sometimes we'll have minimal information to base our decisions on, but what we really want to do is, as best as we can, is to place children with carers who look well positioned to be able to meet their needs and keep them safe consistently. We're not wanting to make placements that aren't, that are going to fail from the outset. Can I choose the age and gender of the child? Our assessors work with you to recommend the best fit, considering your skills, preferences and household dynamics. Regarding the age, gender and needs of children you are approved to care for. It's important to keep in mind that having very specific preferences regarding age and gender can make it more difficult to make a good match. So having a sort of a wider, broader approval can be helpful. It can give us more options to consider. Some of the children that we look to place may be a certain age chronologically, but a different age developmentally, for instance. Anyway.
Can I add, Mike, as well? Sometimes I meet people and they feel bad about saying, oh, I'd like a child, at this age range, or they feel bad about being specific. And I always say it's good to have an idea of what you think is going to be a good fit, because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we're matching to the best of our ability to your family and to your household. So, we'll always be really honest and upfront with you guys. And, that's what we hope to get from our foster carers, is there's that two-way street of making sure that, we're doing the right thing by you guys as well. And we want to make sure that we're, trying to be as successful as we possibly can when we're placing children.
Yeah, sometimes there's very good reasons to have, some parameters in place around that. Okay. Other questions that we sometimes get asked: do children in care have ongoing relationships with their family? In most cases, yes. We know that maintaining connection with family in whatever way possible is part of ensuring good long-term outcomes for children in care. Our care team will help you find the best ways to support family relationships and ensure it is safe for all. So really, really important that we support young people in maintaining relationships with their family, regardless of how we may personally feel about a young person's families. That's not the main concern. What happens if the placement isn't working out? Stability is key for children in order to do well and thrive. It is not in the child's best interest to be moved continuously, so we need resilient carers who are able to work with our care team to push through the harder days. If ending the placement has to happen, we'll always be there to make sure goodbyes are done well. So yes, unfortunately, sometimes placements do break down, but we'll do whatever we can to support you to try and make things better and support you to work through whatever difficulties there might be to get to a better place. How long does the assessment process take? So there's kind of two parts to the assessment process, if you like. There's the inquiry phase, which is the phase that Karina will support you with, which is about exchanging information, collecting information, doing background checks, you completing the training that's required. And then there's the assessment phase. So the assessment phase is very structured and it's no more than 5 months. The inquiry phase, there's a few variables in there. So in terms of how quickly you guys fill in paperwork that's required, how long it takes for references and checks to come back, when we can get you onto training courses. And then once the assessment goes off to the department, there's a period of time when they have to review it and then make a decision, which could be 2 weeks, it could be 2 months, but it's, so in all, it could take up to 12 months, the whole process altogether, but it could be quicker than that, depending on those variables that I mentioned earlier.
I've just had another question, Mike, about schooling, a really good question around, young people that are placed with foster placements, whereabouts they go to school and whether it's in close proximity, and how does it work? And I think that's very case by case as well. We have children that have moved schools to be in closer proximity to the foster placement when they've moved to a long-term placement. Some children that have moved from north to south, if it's deemed appropriate for the young person, they will move schools. So it's something that is very case by case and is different depending on the individual child, and their individual circumstances. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, what you often find or sometimes find is when a child is first initially placed with you, it might be that the department decide they want the young person to stay within the school that they're currently in terms of that being a consistent place for the young person who's probably going through a bit of a transitional, going through an awful lot of that time. So to have that consistent place of familiarity is really important to children. Sometimes it might be that if plans do become longer term, then at that point they may look at that young person transitioning to a school that is closer to where you live. But like Karina says, every case has its own uniqueness, so they all every situation is slightly different.
And we have another question around can the foster child attend the same school as the biological child in the home? And I think it's definitely a possibility. It's something that would be up for discussion with the DCP and the care team, but absolutely 100% a possibility.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
In terms of the assessment process that Mike was just talking about as well, it can be as quick or as long as your circumstances make. So, the more available you are to attend training and the quicker you get your paperwork back, the quicker the process will be. But what is really, really important, as I always say to people as well, is that don't feel rushed. If you feel like now's the right time, we can put you on hold or we can get back in touch with you at a later date. You've always got the opportunity to rethink and reevaluate and make sure that this is the right time and this is the right avenue. So it's always important to know that you can put yourself on hold or you can withdraw and reconsider your options as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Karina. Okay. So what support will you receive as a carer Can be difficult to comprehend the experiences children bring with them. So it's important that carers feel supported and confident in their role. You'll receive ongoing learning and development. So as well as training that you'll attend prior to being approved, you'll have continuous training opportunities throughout your time as a foster carer. There'll be clinical support from in-house psychologists. You have 24/7 on-call support. You have respite where possible. You receive financial support. And you receive opportunities to meet with other foster carers on a regular basis. That's some of the most valued support, I would think, Glen. Okay, social events and programs. Lots of opportunities to meet up with other foster carers and other foster families and other children. We also encourage carers to form supportive peer relationships through peer networks and approaches such as the Mockingbird family. So Mockingbird is a new way of fostering that we're doing within LWB. We've only recently launched this program. It's kind of like linking several foster families together to create like a larger family type environment. We have, they're called a constellation. We have 2 constellations at the moment. I think we're looking at launching a 3rd one soon. So it might be that once you become a foster carer, if this is something that you're interested in, it's something you can have a chat with your supervising social worker about, and there may be an opportunity to get involved in one of those constellations at some point down the line. It depends on various things, but something to perhaps go and have a look at. So where to from here? So having a look on our website is a good place. There's lots more information on there. If you'd like to talk to one of our foster care specialists at the National Inquiry Team, the number is 1300 592 227. They'll take some basic information, and then the next person you talk to will be Karina. We'll also send you lots of information in an email following this evening's presentation. And if you're not ready just yet, you can join our mailing list, and we can keep contact with you from time to time and let you know what's going on. And even if you decide after tonight's presentation that fostering isn't for you or timing isn't right, we just appreciate you taking the time out to listen to us. And if you want to tell any of your family and friends about us, that would also be great. So that concludes our presentation for this evening. I don't know if anyone else has got any more questions. Have you got any more questions for anyone?
There's a couple of questions that have come through for Glen, if he's able to answer them. Yeah, so there's some people asking about whether Glen has a young person in his care that still has some birth family contact.
Yeah, absolutely. There are several things with the birth contact, and we encourage it. We work with the department, and we are always very attuned to when these visits are programmed. Now, they are monitored and programmed by the department, but we are very keen for that connection to be made, because after all, it's our child's parent, and we are looking after that child on behalf of that parent. And what we want to see is that relationship grow as the child gets older, so that when they are adults and maybe can handle a few things a little better themselves, they have that relationship there, because it is their mother, father, etc. It's not always possible, but we definitely encourage that. And then we also, because our child is Aboriginal, we also are very, very focused on making sure our child is connected to the community, their actual nation, which is nowhere near Adelaide, and making sure that we do whatever we can to foster that our child in the culture they were born in, etc. So we are in contact with a number of different people and agencies to make that happen, and we attend cultural events wherever we can. So, for instance, in McLaren Vale last weekend, there was the Sky Song show as part of the festival, and we took him along to that because that told a number of Aboriginal stories in a spectacular way. So we look after our child in that sort of area. There's another question. I've just noticed, do I have biological children? Yep, I have 4 of them. And when we were looking at this, our youngest was still at home with us. He was 17 at that stage. So when we undertook this training and intent, we had a discussion with our youngest. And then when we were offered a permanent placement, we actually had a family conference on a Friday night and had a good chat about it. We read everything to do with the child that was provided for us. And then we made a decision that Sunday afternoon we'd get together and we would work it out. And so that Sunday afternoon, we all talked about it, and the agreement was if any one of us was not keen, we wouldn't do it, because it's a total family commitment. And fortunately, our son, this always gets me, our son basically said, well, if we don't look after him, who will? And the decision was made. So it's, I think your family has to be involved because it is a very, very big commitment. And I might add one other thing that I was prompted as well. Foster caring is not just a thing you do. It is it's a commitment. And if you're looking after a special needs child, you will be tested, okay? And one of the things you must have is resilience. But the biggest thing you need to understand is know why. Why are you doing this? Because in the worst of times, if you haven't figured out why you're doing this, that's when you'll quit. But if you know why you're doing this, you'll go through all the tough times and it'll be so worth it. If I was asked, would you do it all over again? In a blink. And we've been through some pretty interesting times, but in a blink, because I know why. My why I discovered through the interviews. And that was one of the biggest things about the interviews. It helped both my wife and I figure out, why are we doing this? And once we'd figured that out, once we'd gone through those interviews, it actually strengthened our resolve to do this, strengthened our belief in ourselves. So I just hope that helps somebody who's listening tonight. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Glen. I appreciate that. Thank you. Karina,
Got a few more questions come through. That was great feedback, Glen. Thank you so much for sharing. A few people have just popped some questions in the chat box. Someone's asked if it's difficult to travel when you're fostering, and I think it's case by case, but generally no. You know, pre-COVID, no, it's not a difficult thing to do. You can still travel as you probably plan to, but there's a few extra steps that you need to consider along the way. So instead of you needing to get approvals from the department, you know, things need to be really well planned in advance, and that's likely that it's changed obviously with COVID, but you know, I've worked in supported placements with young people that went off to Europe for 6 weeks with their foster carer that was supported by the department, and the department organised their passport and everything, and fully supported that experience. Travelling within South Australia, there's no restrictions. You don't need to get any formal approvals. It just needs to be agreed within the care team. So it needs to be the DCP and LWB and the care team need to be supportive of it. So I hope that answers your question. Another person has asked, they've got 2 spare bedrooms, and yes, you can request to care for siblings if you've got the capacity. If you've got 2 spare bedrooms, you're committed to providing care to siblings, 100%. We would love that. We do have so many siblings that come into care, and we do try and keep them together where possible. So that would be amazing. Another person has asked about Aboriginal children. Are they likely to be placed with Aboriginal carers first? As the department has a very strict policy or principle around placing Aboriginal children, the first port of call is that they want to place Aboriginal children with kin and they're within their kinship networks. If that can't be done, then they look at unrelated children, unrelated people within their community. If that can't be done, they look at unrelated Aboriginal families. If that can't be done, they look at non-Aboriginal families. So, you can absolutely care for Aboriginal children. It's just a little bit of an extra component of your assessment and your training, and a little bit more investment. We always ask people, it's great that you want to care for Aboriginal children, but we want to see that commitment. We want to see you guys working in the community and making connections and exploring what's around in the community to support cultural connections. So that's something to be mindful of as well. We've had another question around the COVID vaccine. Is that essential to be foster carers? I'm going to handball that one to Mike since I've done lots of talking.
Yeah, thanks, Karina. It's not technically essential at the moment. I think the state, you might be required as a foster carer to support a young person to have vaccinations, and regardless of your own personal views on vaccinations, you may be required to do that. What I would say is that whilst it's not essential, we may have difficulties around training events, but we'd have to look at each of those cases individually. Yeah, so that's probably as much as I can say on that at the moment. We have another question. We have a very big but very friendly dog. We have lots of foster families with lots of different pets. We'd obviously have a look at your situation as part of the assessment process. As long as he's friendly, I guess we'll probably be okay, but we'll do that assessment as we go through. We'd have to be probably a bit mindful of children coming in and how you introduce children to a big dog. So have we got any more questions? If we have missed anything, guys, please feel free to drop us a line tomorrow. But if there aren't any more questions, then I think we'll conclude tonight's presentation. I'd like to thank you all for your time. Really appreciate you taking the time to come and listen to us this evening. Regardless of what you do next following this, just thank you for even taking the time to come and listen to us. And thank you, Glen and Karina, for joining us as well this evening. Really appreciate your support and your contributions. So take care, everyone. We'll be in touch. We'll send you an email with links to lots of different things, and look forward to potentially seeing some of you again in the future. All the best. Take care. Thanks, everyone.